And we have Martin.
Yes.
And oh, that's cool. That just popped up. We are streaming to YouTube on the Social Web Cafe. Might as well let you guys know because you might be watching one place and then you know where to watch it in another place. But we are streaming to the Social Web Cafe YouTube channel, and we are also streaming to, I almost said Twitter. I did say Twitter,
Yeah.
to X and Social
It's
Web Cafe, and also to
okay.
Twitch
Hmm.
on Social Web Cafe. So any of you watching and you want to watch in one of the other places, now you know where we are. And also, we will have the production version of the post production version of this. Our podcast comes out usually the next week, but since we double up on some of these, you will find it one of these weeks on everywhere where you listen to podcasts. You'll find the audio version, and the video version will likely, well, it actually will show up on the YouTube channel for Social Web Cafe. And Martin, you'll probably post at least clips or something, right?
Hmm.
Repurpose.
Yeah.
We'll have them out there, and if, as long as TikTok exists, we can have clips on there too. That's
Yeah.
a whole nother discussion.
It is.
That's a separate. Don't want to touch politics and TikTok, but
No.
anyway.
But that talking about clips, I like how new modern podcast application is doing very different things. Like Fountain has their version of it. Podverse has its version. You could say that the one for iPhones, Overcast, they have
Mm-hmm.
a simple version or simple. He's doing it very, it's working for him. So he was, I think, one of first that you could do like a simple clip, and now true fans. And I must say again,
Oh,
it it is
yay!
this gamification in a positive way, and it's universal app web progressive application until he will have an iPhone and an Android app also, and
But I,
he
I like how he's focusing on
yes,
getting all the bugs and everything. Not that there's bugs, but I mean, he's focused on really getting the quality
yeah,
done on the
and
web. And
and
then,
he
yeah,
explains that also during our conversation why
exactly.
he says that that's a so-called not a fail but in quotation marks now, but because they don't understand it, but it was a smart move to do that, to get
Mm-hmm.
everything in order, all the ducks in the row, two two
Yep.
two two.
Wish I had my little duck. I bet there's a
Yeah.
little duck on my desk over there. I'll have to bring it next week.
And then again the takeaway from it, that you have to talk in order to the users to understand. So like that's what I'm coming to, a comment, a clip, so you recognize it from other things.
Right.
So
Right.
a boost that we like to say, as I call it, digital telegram with a donation, is the easy to understand because one of the leading in that field, like Google and YouTube, but with super chats, why
Mm-hmm.
not saying super comment
Right. Because it used to
with
be a
the payment or
boostergram,
yeah,
right? And now it's a super comment,
yeah,
which
yeah,
makes sense. It's a
super,
comment, but it's
yeah,
got sats attached.
super
So
comment,
now,
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
so it's a super comment. I'm
yeah,
getting this. I was hanging out on, I was kind of delayed on working on our podcast. I even
yeah,
told Sam that because I was talking to him last week and asking him questions about. I was so excited, and I thought I have to
great,
go edit the podcast episode that you
yeah.
appear on because you're our guest, and I can't seem to leave your website alone because I just love True Fans.
And I will say that also for the record because I think maybe it was in the live and maybe you, in a nice way, edited it out. But I know that by myself, it's one of my challenges because I have so many podcasts to do it on a regular. So I'm really happy to have with you this accountability, to have a set time and to do it. And I have that for several podcasts also. But it's hard, and still we don't need to going live or going recording or publishing at a certain time in a way because it is not regular back in the day radio or TV for that matter, right?
Right, right.
Because one of the advantages to that you could listen whenever, but he made a point there that it got for me also that if I have like a certain of amounts of podcasts that I like on a rotation, then I have a certain time when I want to listen to it also.
And you'll replace that one. I think that's what he
Yeah,
said is that if you have like five of them and one of
yeah,
them
yes,
isn't
correct.
there, you're going to replace it with another one and then you
And
might lose
that's
that spot.
to
That's
be
a really
very
valid,
open and
yeah.
now I interrupt you, but to be very, very
No.
open and transparent also. That's now with our new podcast to get into new listeners rotation,
Yep. Yep.
and that will maybe take some time, but hopefully we have both tweeps and bloggers, fellow bloggers, and social media that we know in the space, and be found. How do you say? Searchable, findable, also in different
Yep.
ways. And you did also great things. It's really fun to watch or to listen and to hear your name and how we pronounce it, and also the name of the podcast you do, Fusion, about James Cridland's Pod News,
Oh
because
yes,
he has that as one service. But then you have to do it in a certain way, and you did all the check marks there. So now we are officially.
we are official. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And your point about the as far as timing and consistency and all that. I mean
Yep.
that's a big thing, and I struggle with that one. And great points that you brought up as far as you know, are we down on ourselves if we don't get it on time and so forth? Like for instance, diabetic real. It's
Mm.
supposed to. I don't want anyone to mark this down because a lot of times I'm a day late or whatever. It's almost like I tell myself, okay, it's Monday, but it really comes out on Tuesday,
Yep.
whatever.
And I say
So I
that also.
didn't.
I will interrupt you now because now it's like. And Eileen asked that on Twitter what time zone we are doing it, because she had some Amazon, was it influencer ambassador chat, and I
Mm-hmm.
joked, it's noon Eastern time, or should I say, as a New England Patriots fan, New England Go Patriots time,
Mm-hmm.
because it's often on the East Coast, but it's also in Florida, it's also in other parts,
Right.
but it's called
Right.
Eastern. So I think even Ohio, where I was also a part
Right.
of it, at least, was
Right.
Eastern time. So it's about timing, but I often think in American time. So I had Tuesday Tech, but I recorded it early in Wednesday, but I still was at American time zone because I'm in that zone. As you said,
Right. Right.
he said, Sam, I think you said that you are on UK time because, yeah, and he said he didn't sleep. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. Yep. But I think with the diabetic real, I kept thinking, all right, you know what? It's Friday now, and I thought, well, I'll just get it out today. It'll just
Mm,
be one day late, on Tuesday, 2 days
yeah.
late, three. And
Yeah.
so here I am on Friday, and I'm thinking, well, Monday is just around the corner. And you know what? There's TV shows that take breaks. The actors take breaks.
Yeah.
They have weeks where they don't. I thought, you know what, Deb, you can't kill yourself and
No.
then put out 2 episodes back to back, because that's going to make your listeners wonder just as much.
Yeah.
It's like, why am I getting 2 episodes coming out the RSS feed right back to back? So you know what? This week is gone.
Yeah.
Most people that know me know that we're really concentrating on this podcast, Studio Fusion, and
Yeah.
getting it launched. So hey,
So, and that's also that challenge, because I never thought about that myself either, when you roll out, in a slowly way. But now we are on, so-called on the map, or how you want to call it. And you have said it in a nice trailer. So now
thank you.
we are really trying. Now we have to both come up with topics, but and that's no problem in a way. But
That's easier than the launch. To
yeah,
me,
and
to
launch.
me, a podcast launch is really hard as far as the
Yeah,
amount of time. Like I told you, the templates we've been emailing back and
yeah,
forth. It took me like 4 days to and that's me. I can get really picky on that one.
yeah,
But it's like I'll do an intro, and it's like, okay, that's not right. And then I'll
yeah,
scrap it, and I'll do another intro. Nope,
yeah,
that's not right, and scrap it, and do another intro. And I mean, I'll keep, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh yes, that's right. And then after I
yeah,
do the intro, you haven't even seen it, Martin.
yeah,
It's just sitting on my computer. Then I'm ready to edit the content, take the content, edit the audio, and the podcast gets launched. So there's like 4 days
yeah,
where nothing was produced because all I'm doing is going through the template. But once the template's
yes,
done, now we're a machine.
yeah,
Now we
and
produce, produce, produce,
and that's good.
produce.
So now we will have to get the guests in the row, as ducks, to joke.
I gotta get
And
that
it's good
duck.
that like Captivate and others, they have like this booking schedule, and you could have. I have a service called um, Meet Meet Fox, I think it's called, and
That's a nice,
Calendly and
nice
others. Yeah,
service. Yeah,
yeah.
it's
And
it's
it's a service that costs also, so I have to use it in a positive way.
yep.
But I like what you now that we have this, and also that's we to joke. We want to listen to podcasting 2.0 live stream, So that's why we now have
I want
it.
to hook that up. Yeah, the
Yeah,
live tag. I want to do
yeah.
that. I didn't do it this week, but that's
No,
something.
but take
But
take the time also because it's not so many shows out there yet. But when we have
ooh,
a
we're gonna
good
do it. We're
spot,
gonna do it.
so we will not so-called compete with others. But
Right.
and that's good. So then the guest also knows that, and Sam, we know that he likes to listen to podcasting 2.0, but he took time to be our guest.
Right.
So
Right.
but when I was thinking about that, so it's good to have that guest will know that it will be an hour before, and then this time, and we are doing it an hour before, so it will be good time slot. And of course, then we will be flexible. But it's
Yep.
good that there you have this repetition. Okay, Fridays that's live, and also it will be published. So yeah,
Something is reminding me of something, and we
yeah,
are trying to figure out. I hope my husband tells the bot to be quiet,
yeah.
because we don't want that one to. Oh, it's telling me to wake up. I think I'm awake. I think that.
That's good. And then when you mention Michael, and we'll when go into the topic and so on, I listened to the how to say the intro of our first episode with Michael. That's perfect.
Thank you.
We,
You know
t-
what? You know what?
talking about
That bot.
yeah,
I'm sorry. The bot. This is the world of time zones, and if
yeah.
you don't set the bot, I set the bot in a different time zone than where I actually live, so she thinks that I'm in another time zone, so she's got to wake me up.
Okay.
Anyway,
That's okay.
so welcome. We have 3 people here.
Yeah,
Actually, 4. You count the dog and the bot and us. And anyway, and a couple AI people and Michael. So yeah, we've got like 7 people here.
good. And I
Anyway,
wanted to
sorry.
say that of the first episode that Michael is doing the introduction there. Like how do you
Yes,
say
yes.
voiceover or what you call it? And we talked about that in the green room about different accents, and I think of course English is my second language, so I have my so-called Queen's English, and now it's King's English or or something like that, and we all have accents. But often, have you thought about that? Often, like somebody buys a voiceover or they find a AR bot talking, like it's often English. Have you heard about even American podcasts or
Mm-hmm.
shows? They have this English thing. And now I really like to listen to Michael to introduce us and our the podcast.
I like
So
listening to him. He's fun.
yeah, so it was fun.
Hey,
So
before
yeah,
we go into our topic
yep,
on the topic of calendar and live streaming and all that, and as people are listening to this as a podcast, just to clear it up, the I'm looking at the calendar here, and also I will put a link to our, since we were talking about Calendly
yep.
and your Fox or what
Meet Fox. Yep.
Meet Fox. That's right. And I'm actually using a program called Amelia,
Hmm.
and that's another program, but I won't go on. We can have a whole
Yeah.
podcast on scheduling at some
Yep.
point. Anyway, we are doing this weekly. I'm looking at the calendar. We have if you are a guest, or if you'd like to be a
Hmm.
guest, definitely get in touch with us. But Martin and I get together 1 hour before this time slot, so that's 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern time, and 5 p.m.
Central
Your
European
right,
time. Yes.
right. So 4 p.m. UK,
Yep.
and then we chat for 45 minutes, an hour,
Yep.
and then we do another hour, and that's when we have a guest.
Hmm.
And if we don't have a guest, then we're doing our time that hour later. So we're always doing this live stream at the time that we're doing it right now.
Yep.
But
Yeah, that's
sometimes
good.
we're doing actually 2 hours. So
Yeah.
if we haven't confused you yet, you can check out our website at
Yeah. And listen to the
studiofusion.co.
trailer also, because where you say it.
Yep.
And
Yep.
you talked in a very nice way, but I did have to listen to it a couple of times, and then I used the chapters when you said this small word until. So it was start and the next time slot with what we are doing now. So
Right.
then I got it, because it was
Right.
many, and that's why probably Eileen was asking, when do you have it? So
Right.
this will take some time, and even podcasting 2.0, they have often 7:30, but sometimes it's a bit later.
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes maybe they have a guest in a different time zone and they have changed it. So that
Yep.
you have to think about also. If you don't have so many guests in pipeline over time, then you could always, be on that time.
And we may have other times because we did talk about
Yeah,
opening up other time slots,
yeah,
but we'll try to at least have this time slot so that
yeah.
people have an expected time to be able to join in and ask questions and so forth.
And,
But
and that
speaking of
I
chat,
could,
oh, go
yeah,
ahead.
and that I could also say about this new podcast also, podcasting in practice. But there they have, I think, that's my guess, as almost like a course on true fans.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have planned it ahead some time and had all the guests booked because they were already on the page
Right.
that
Right.
Claire has, and then they record them, and then they put it out. But then she had this future Claire, so things have maybe happened
Right.
since
Oh,
they
that
record.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that does make
that's
sense.
we talked about a little about it. It's an interesting format in a way. It's like a hybrid of something.
Now,
But
I've listened to Claire's podcast like kind of one off. I haven't.
yeah,
I don't think I've ever listened to one of the topics like all three of them
yeah,
in a row. We should have Claire on and actually
yeah,
talk about podcasts and how she came
yeah.
up with that
And
concept
how
because
to
that
be
sounds
creative
interesting.
and so on.
Right.
And
Right.
because that's why it's good to have it at this time. But I'm for the record also, I'm a bit not tired, but I am up really early in the morning
Yep. Yep.
because it was creative mornings and they start at 7:30 in the morning, and I was up 4 or 5 or something like that.
Oh wow.
Uh,
I've been up
so
all night, so that
and
might be
they
why.
have, but that's their concept to have it creative mornings. So they have it, and that's all around the world also. And it started in America.
Wow.
Talking
Wow.
about calendar, she had a calendar call, and I will try to pronounce it. It's like a fun with play with words. TEUX DEUX. So to do in a so-called French style. And if you look at that, if that's still around, I think so. It's like an app, like a calendar, but the design layout looks like a calendar, that a physical calendar that you open. So to do, TEUX DEUX. And she wanted to get creatives together, so then she started Creative Mornings. And their motto is everyone is welcome, everyone is creative.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. So now
Speaking
we
of
have shared the
creative,
screen.
let's
Yeah.
let's I'm gonna watch a. I'm gonna leave the mic on, so if you want to comment while we're watching it, and you've already seen this, so you have the advantage. But
Yeah. Very
related to
nice.
our topic today, which is and we normally do this together, but I'm sorry, Martin, I just kind of jumped in and chose a
Yeah.
topic and went with this one. I was like really
Great.
passionate about this. So, and instead of explaining the topic, guys, you can watch this video with us, and I will actually attach this one so that people can
Yeah.
watch it separately as well. And
Great.
it's about RSS feeds and validation. And let me pop over, find it. Except it's a little tricky because there's a little message right on top of it. Okay, here we go. Now, are you able to hear the volume? Is that too loud or did you right here?
No, I don't hear.
Oh dear. Well, that's a little challenge. So you can see it, but you can't
Yeah.
hear it.
No, because
Is
it
that
should be
correct?
coming in the monitor headphones, right?
It should be. Oh, you know what? You know what? Um, I actually should have put it in the media wall. How about this? Instead of, I know how to share it. Instead of sharing it visually, how about Martin? Let's see. What can we talk about that's related to the validation? Do you want to explain what about RSS feeds and validation and podcasting 2.0 while I load it? Because
Yeah.
I can't talk and load at
No,
the
I
same
could try
time.
it in a very, and I must say that also that you're really good to get it and explain it and understand it technically. I could get it like how to say the nature of it, but I don't really to joke to know how an RSS feed works or how you could how you could run with scissors and break it. And that's why
Right,
back in the
right.
day I used the validator for blogs and for podcasts to see that it's really working. That day, I think I did that as my workflow on Libsyn. I had this. It was some called
Hmm.
Feed Validator or something like that, but it was a free service, and and then it was something called. It was a Swedish service, I think, also that popped up, but nobody of the hosting had it back then. It was not integrated, so you hope that it was working.
Well,
So
for
that,
anyone that
yeah,
doesn't know, that is what podcasts are based on, our RSS feed.
yeah,
I mean, it used to be years ago. We used them for blogs, we used them for everything, but that's how
and
it's like. It's a text file,
yeah,
and if you're thinking, hey, that's audio, yeah, there's an audio file, but the text file, the text in the RSS is actually telling the reader where to go for that MP3 file so that you can
yeah,
listen to the
and
MP3. So
then it's really important that it's not been broken or breaking in different ways. So that's why you wanted to check that it's a valid RSS feed, that it's working, so you don't get error messages.
exactly.
And that you could, if it was something with artwork or something that you wrote in the show notes, or uh, it could be a small detail also, like some character that it didn't like or something like that. So then you had to check that manually.
Exactly. Hey, do you have the PowerPoint that I sent you?
You mean
The PowerPoint presentation?
the tree?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll download it. So I will see if I could.
Why don't we load that? I know it's a little bit out of order because we are going to look at that separately. I
Yeah,
just
I will see if I could.
so it's a little out of order, but I just went to load this into the system here, and it's too big. So I'm just gonna make it smaller, and then we will load it. Nothing like doing it right on the fly here. So if I look like I'm a little bit like stoned or something, I'm not. That's just me looking at the what
So
I'm doing here.
now I click,
Okay.
and now it's hopefully. Yeah, I have it here now,
24.
like a PowerPoint.
Okay.
So how will I? Oops. And now
You could.
again.
That one doesn't have any audio, so that one we could actually.
So where did I put that now? Now I
1080 by 30. Let's see. We can.
I have it here now on my
Is
desktop. How will I
okay.
share it?
Yep, you can just share the. You should be able to share the window. Just the like open it up in
Yeah.
PowerPoint and then share the PowerPoint app.
Share, and then screen, or no, the presentation. It said a presentation. If that's
Yep, yep.
click, upload a slide. Uh-huh. Unlock features used by. Okay.
And
Book it.
this.
No, that was something. Can't. Maybe I can't do that. No. So when I go to, is it window? Yeah, and
There's
click on it.
yeah right. The first box that you see is
Is
like
it
all
like
the
that?
tabs of your browser, and then the second one is all of the apps and things and windows that are on your computer.
Is it correct like that, or should I make it
Oh
bigger?
yeah. Oh, that's fine. And then you can hit the presentation option on the on your
Is it
should be like a
the play one, or no?
no well you probably don't want play, although play might work.
So where is the
Either
present?
way, you can also just do it that way and just click on each slide. That's another option too. There's so many options when you're
Yeah.
dealing
So
with the
now it's the whole
presentation.
screen. So I don't see you now, but do
Oh,
you see?
okay. I'm still here and I can see it.
Yeah.
And we can just so I put this together just for fun as a decision tree. And the idea was to look at this after we watched the video, but the video is being scrunched right now. I'm making it smaller so that I can load it into our area here where we're sitting. So this is a decision tree. I think most people have heard of a decision tree. It's kind of like an if-then statement where you sit down and ask yourself questions. So we can look at the next slide. And this has to do with RSS feeds and whether they're validated. So you'll get like a preview of what we're going to look at in the video. So Martin, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. Is it? We're
Do you see it?
still. Nope. We're still on the first one.
Oh, okay, because I see it. So how?
Oh. Huh.
I'm clicking.
You might be in the presentation. Maybe if you want to go back to like the work area and then just manually. There you go.
Yeah.
Whoops.
So
Except we need to go up a few. There you
like
go.
this.
And then just
Yeah.
yep. And then just go down one slide.
Yeah.
There you go. So the question is podcasting 2.0 important to you? And then we go to the next one. And if yes, then we continue. And if no, then we stop. Because what we're saying is, the next slide, is that podcasting 2 is not important. That's kind of,
And I like
right?
your style, and this is very logical in a way, but in a positive way, this is pretty harsh. And I like how you come up with it and your conclusion. And this will really drive home something.
Well, yeah,
That
and I didn't
and
mean it harsh, but it's,
no, but
if
in a
you're asking
positive way.
yourself, yeah,
Do you,
it's like, okay, it's not important.
yeah, and this is the mission statement in a way for podcasting 2.0, the initiative. They say they want to, support, and they want to enhance and something more with the RSS. That it's really important.
Right. Well, then it
Uh,
fits in with what we're talking about
yeah,
today.
but
Okay.
the challenge is that the regular user maybe don't understand that's important. But in the future, they will understand that why podcasting 2.0 is important. So with this now, you have given lots of argument in a logical way.
And
So that
yeah, it is harsh in the sense that
and
it's
that's what I like. Yeah,
binary question of,
yeah,
hey, okay, then you gotta face up. It's either important or it's not. So then
yeah.
our next
So
question
yeah,
is a valid RSS feed important to you? And the movie or the video that we're going to watch, we'll go through that as far as valid. And part of that on the next slide is, for instance, do you care what it looks like? Do you care whether or not the tags? And we'll learn more about tags as we go on. You're not going to become an expert today as far as podcasting 2.0 tags. But
and that's what
is,
Sam is calling features. So
right,
yeah,
right. Is that important that they're valid? And do you care what your podcast, your display looks like, your presentation and so forth?
hmm
And then the answer to that, if it's yes, then we continue on this decision tree. And if it's no, then stop, because basically you're saying that quality doesn't matter. I mean, that's
mm
just what you're saying,
mm.
So then the next question, and this is where, the rubber hits the road or whatever, to what length are you prepared to go for a valid RSS feed? Are you willing to, and I'm kind of giving a hint, so maybe we'll just say this one really quick and that will come
Yeah.
up in the video, but to the length that I went, and again, doesn't make any sense till we watch the video. So, or hire someone to do it, or choose, go to, I think it would be, a host that will do it for you. And again, this makes more sense when we watch the video, or just leave it and let it be invalid. And if you leave it and let it be invalid, you've just gone back to the previous question and said the validity doesn't matter that much. And if you do that, you are saying that, you're going to leave it alone and you can't really complain about your podcast not operating correctly and the display looking bad, and the tags being all up, mixed up and all that, because you've just decided that it's not important enough to go the extra mile.
Could I throw in something that maybe could stir up some
Go
things?
ahead. Go ahead.
Because Sam was, he was talking about Apple and talking about Google, and I think fellow bloggers could remember that a feed reader, RSS feed
Mm-hmm.
reader for blogs,
Mm-hmm.
and the one that was for a long time, it was then acquired. What was that called?
The
Acquired by.
Google, the Google Reader or the
Yeah, but it was independent from the beginning. But then it was feed reader or feed, and then it got acquired by Google. But then not updated for many many years, and then there was threatening to shut it down totally. But it's still there somewhere, and now I don't remember the name, but
I was
it was an
surprised Feedly is still around. I thought that
yeah,
one got
but
shut down, but it's still around.
yeah, but the original one that was very simple. in its nature got acquired by Google, and then Google said one thing, and then they didn't, when they changed, and then didn't update it, and then they threatened to shut it down. And maybe here is the answer to why Google is doing what they are doing with podcasting. They say now we have Google Podcast, and then sometimes later they say now we scrap it. Now it's called YouTube Podcasts.
Yeah. I
So
don't know
I
the
think
mind
we are
of
coming
Google.
getting, and it would be interesting to hear their reasoning for it. That, and I think they want you to get locked in, because
Right.
you don't really care as a user if you go to YouTube and you could watch a video or listen to a podcast and it's working. But if you want that, you have done also that extra mile to add the feed to YouTube, because then they have a special, thing loops you have to go through. But it's very important that you have your RSS, your own RSS, and it's valid, and nobody will mess with it.
Yep. Now, should we pull up?
Except yourself, if you are
Right.
like you,
Right.
knowledgeable to do that.
Let's pull up the video.
Okay.
I
Should I
think-
close?
Yes, please. I think maybe it's
Ooh.
still uploading, but I only say that because I want to make sure that I pop back in case anyone's commenting, so I catch anyone. I don't want to leave people stranded.
So how do I close it now?
You can. There should be a button at the bottom
Yeah.
that says "Stop
Yep.
Sharing." There we go.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know what Google, and thank you Google for hosting the YouTube.
Yeah.
that
Until
one.
we find an
I don't- yeah.
alternative,
Yeah.
like Rumble or whatever. Yeah.
Looks
Or
like that.
I think you should look into that, Deborah, because it's totally over my tech level, and it's called what is called feed.
Oh, the other the YouTube competitor.
That is very open
isn't it?
source, but it looks very, layout and design. I don't
it's
get it,
Yeah.
but I think that's a real alternative for the future, at least as a backup. It will
Right.
never have that audience or, because YouTube is the second largest
Largest,
search
yep.
engine, and it's owned by Google.
Yep.
So,
Yep. Oh,
but
there we go. She
PeerTube,
finally-
I think it's called PeerTube.
So so you're not talking about, because I just pulled up Rumble, but you're talking about.
So Rumble is and it's like an alternative platform. It looks very much like YouTube, but PeerTube is that you could, if you have like the control of your stream, like going live item tags, but with video, then you could stream it on PeerTube, and then it will, be recorded and stored there also. But for me, it was like, okay, how do I do this? This was too technical.
I'll have
But
to look
this is
into that.
again decentralized place that nobody could shut down, and Rumble
I'll have to
is an alternative. But they have this. If they really get pressured, maybe they have to, shut down.
Right. I'm gonna pop up. Speaking of videos, I'll pop this up.
Yep.
And it said live, so it should be should be showing live and playing it. Podcasting 2. Oh, that was a thumbs up. Okay, all right. Now I'm gonna stop hitting play. That bugs my husband when I do that with the remote. Okay, now I'm gonna hit play, and then I'm gonna take my hands off and just let it go. If it's too loud, just give me a signal. And 2.0 or 2.0 or however you want to pronounce that, then hopefully you have an RSS feed that is valid. We can talk about the details of that more, but if it's not valid, it will not produce good results, valid results. Fortunately, at TrueFans, there is a validator where we can check that. So we're on the TrueFans website, as you can see from the upper left, where currently it says 2025 in the TrueFans
I know
logo.
it's hard to see, but it's up
And
there.
we are going to look
You're
for the
doing
tool.
it very well to do this.
Sam Sethi and his team have a wonderful
Thank you.
validation tool. It's called the Validator, upper right, and at the bottom there where it says Validator. Okay, we are on the validation page, and you'll see the logo again. We're true fans, and we can type in the podcast that we are looking for. Now, I look at this as podcasts fit into 3 categories. It's like a stoplight, like a traffic light. You're either going to get a stop, go, or yield. In other words, more information. So you've got a red, green, or yellow. And if it's red, that means, well, it's not likely to be on True Fans because it just did not validate at all. So we're not going to look at those because, well, I didn't find any of those. So
You're not there.
let's look at the
Yeah, that's a good point because
green
they really
to start out with. Those
imported
are the ones
big
that are
ones,
valid.
but they
So
have-
I'm going to look at
Yeah.
a couple of mine because I know that they actually showed up as valid.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, because recently he said, or did he say that publicly, or did he say it to me? But he said that they have like now millions of podcasts in the feed, and then he got, I think it was on podcastindex.social, and then they said, okay, did you get all the anchors or Spotify for creators then also all this junk podcast that is only test or some other services that upload maybe that's not a regular podcast, it's other kind of material, and no, it's the real deal. So
Right,
there
'cause
are
it
lots
doesn't
of
validate.
podcasts out there, but he has managed them. But at the beginning you had to so-called apply in order to get your podcast on TrueFans, but it was not as some of these other services that's floating around that use the data. Claim your podcast on our new service, and they use the data in order to sell it. This is that this service will be valid and usable in all ways. So,
Well, and I
but
had
it's good
a-
to do it in these different steps.
Right.
Yeah.
I had a podcast up here, and I don't want to name names, but it was
Yeah.
somebody, a friend of mine, and somebody that I actually worked with, called it her. Again, I'm not going to name names, but called it her podcast,
Yeah.
and it's not a podcast. I mean, it's not on True Fans, and it's never going to show up. It's basically an audio recording, and it
Yeah.
would have been one of those that would be under the category of red
Yeah.
because of stoplight because it's not a podcast, and
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. There's a lot of things out there that people call podcasts that are just audio recording, if that. Some
Yeah.
of them are barely an audio recording. So
Yeah.
it's not a pod. It's red is, hey, it's not a podcast. But also there's a little hint on the yellow. You can have one that really isn't quite a podcast, but it's got enough of the tags that it validates enough that it can function as a podcast on the Apple system, and that's in your yellow category. But we'll
Yeah.
get to that one.
Because that's the important thing, because nowadays you don't really have to go to Apple Podcast Connect that you often had to do because they are the main player. But there if you got that correct, you got the green light from Apple. But now we see
Yep.
with the new tags or features, it could be a challenge, so to speak.
Yep.
So it could
Yep.
be
So if it's
accepted by
valid-
Apple, but
I'm sorry.
with all these new features, it could be that it could, be yellow in a way. It's still an RSS and it's working to be listening to, but it's not optimal.
Right. I'm sorry. You can slap me. I was being being rude to hit play when you're talking. I'm sorry.
Please continue.
Showed up as valid. And we looked up one of my podcasts, Black Beauty Jag, and we're going to click validate. And you'll notice here that there are no errors according to the response here. No errors found
Or
in the
you will
RSS
notice.
feed. Now, there's a lot more. There's so much information that we can get from the validator. We can look at that in another podcast episode. What we're looking at right now is whether or not that RSS feed has any errors. And this particular RSS feed does not have any errors. It is a valid feed. So that's good. Yay! It's a green light. We go forward
Yay.
on this one. So this is an example of a green light and no errors. And we'll look at an example of another one. And this one just launched recently.
That's this
And
one.
that is
Yes,
Studio
yes.
Fusion. Very recently. And another example of one that, yes, no errors, a valid RSS, a valid feed. And I will tell you now that the reason I know they're valid is not only because I checked them, but because I actually did a hack. I did, well, not hack as in criminal, okay, but I hacked the feed to make sure that it was valid. And that is a topic that we would cover another time. Right now, we're just talking about valid RSS feed, the importance of that, and whether or not you want a valid RSS feed. I would think that you would want it, but that's something that you would consider. So Martin and I will talk about that a bit. But it's the validity of the RSS feed, and if that's a determination that is what you want, and if you've considered everything. Now that's a green light going forward. So now we'll look at, again, we're not going to look at the red light because those are the podcasts that don't show up on True Fans, but we are going to look at yellow. That would be the warning. That would be the podcasts that show up with errors. That would be the ones that are showing up as not completely 100% valid. In other words, they do show up on True Fans, they do show up as podcasts, but they've got warnings. I do have a feed, my very own feed, that is not valid. So when you run the validator and you have a case when you have errors, for instance.
In case anyone is wondering with this use of the word valid, I showed this to my husband. He's like, I'm not in the know. I'm like, yes, you are. If you're human, you're in the know. Valid in the sense it's a valid podcast. Yes, you can listen to it. Yes, there's episodes. Yes, you can subscribe. Yes, you can. It's valid. It exists. It's, not this Excel. I can't say that word. I can't say the word I'm thinking, but I mean, it is.
Yeah, it's not valid. You can't really 100% validate it according to the spec or the standard, but we want to have it as podcasting 2.0. And I have a question. We didn't talk about it so much with Sam, I think, or at all. So that it will be like a returning guest to follow up. Have they programmed this themselves, or do you think it's like an external service that they have implemented on True Fans?
That's an excellent question. We should ask him about that. Maybe we can send the clip and ask him. Yeah. That's an excellent question. So,
for instance, a chapter error, and the chapter is not valid. That's an error. That's saying that the feed is not valid. Another clue is when you don't have a little button that says claim or view, but you actually have a button that says that you need to contact the host. That means it's a yellow light. Proceed with warning because the RSS feed is not valid. I know this because I have this with my podcast. I had it with the two that I just showed you that are green lights, and I fixed them. Like I said, I hacked the feed. If you want to know how to fix your feed so that it's valid, let me know, and maybe we can cover that in our podcast here at Studio Fusion. And it is not for the faint of heart. I will tell you that. It is not for the faint of heart. But anyway, so we're looking at another one of my podcasts, Diabetic Real. And again, errors all over the place. There's no chapter in there. And that's why it's producing an error. It is not a valid feed.
By the way, it's not that there's no chapters, but all of those little red spots there, if you can't see it, it's chapter errors.
That doesn't mean that there's any problem seeing the podcast or listening to the podcast. The podcast will still play, but it's not a valid feed. Now, for me, it's important to me that I have a valid RSS feed, and that's why I hack the other feeds to correct them. And Diabetic Real will be fixed. I will be hacking this feed and correcting it as well. This error is because I added dynamic content. I love that feature. It's where you can add an ad or an intro or a preview. I added content, and when you do that, in this particular case, it adds an empty chapter. And when there's an empty chapter and there's no content, it's actually a missing.
And I think in the latest episode of New Media Show, Todd was talking about that around 57 minutes into the show, about this inserted and what could happen. So maybe that's something.
Oh, and he actually meant, okay.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly, it does it with dynamic content. It doesn't happen, for instance, on all of my podcasts, I
But
use
yeah,
dynamic content. It doesn't happen like in the middle. For instance, my ad in the
it
middle
was
of
in the
it,
beginning, and he
it's only in the beginning.
yeah. So
Yeah.
listen to this because it's for me, it's privacy is very important. So, but he did a test in order to see who who is listening to the ad that he does, like a like an inserted ad, but it's like a promo for his own show or something like that. And then he put a pixel there, and then he could see, thanks to this podcasting 2.0, the data that it was really listened. And then somebody that was interviewed, I think, on podcast Pod News Day Weekly. They had a review with what's her name? She's very much into the advertising industry and knows that back and forth. And she said, "Wow, now we could get data about how many are really listening to the advertising, because that could be important for people who pay advertising in order to show up and know the return on investment." But with this,
Now, was he talking about this, or was he just talking about dynamic content? And the
no,
fact that
he
you
used this
put it
he used dynamic in order to test
Okay,
this.
okay.
So this
Right,
is really interesting experiment.
right,
So,
right.
yeah.
And by the way, the dynamic content, this problem here that you're seeing, it only happens at the beginning, and it happens. Now, I don't know with other hosts. I can comment on Captivate because I use
Yeah.
Captivate. I actually did some testing, and I put dynamic content as a pre-roll. Now, if you don't use dynamic content and all this sounds foreign, don't worry about it because you just ignore what I'm saying. But I put one pre-roll and I put what's called a mid-roll, even though I put it at the beginning of the content. So there were two files of dynamic content, a pre-roll, and then right at the beginning of the podcast, and I'm probably whichever was another file. And I had 2 chapter airs, like what you're seeing on the screen, or what you're seeing on the screen, or what you're seeing, whatever. Then I tried again. I thought, I'm not going to use the pre-roll because maybe the pre-roll's a problem. And I put 2 files at the beginning of the mid-roll. So they're back to back. I had 2 problems. So then I thought, no, I'm not going to do this. So then I tried it with one pre-roll because a pre-roll should work. It's set up for dynamic content so you can have an ad so you have pre-roll. I did it completely by the book, pre-roll, content, chapter error. Then I did it with no pre-roll, and I did it with a mid-roll right at the beginning of the podcast, chapter error. So it didn't matter how you did that at the beginning of the podcast, which would be called a mid-roll because it's inside the enclosure with the podcast, or as a pre-roll, any combination, you got these chapter errors. The only way it worked is the post-roll is okay, or if you put it in the middle, like, after your podcast had been going for a while and you put an ad in the middle. Those are the only times that you didn't have this. But if you put it right at the beginning, you had an empty chapter. So just for clarification, as an option with that decision tree, and if you want to find a solution where you don't have the validity issues, but you want to use dynamic content, I don't think we put that one on our. Well, okay,
No.
You know what? That's overcomplicating it because that's kind of like exponential decision tree. So let's save that for another podcast episode.
Missing field. If you picture an Excel spreadsheet, it's like there's a column that's missing a field completely. I won't go all into detail. It's actually a database field, a database table, and it's missing that cell, and it's all out of whack. So it does not validate. And that's why it's throwing off all these errors, because for every single one of those fields that's missing, in other words, if you have a podcast that has 2 dynamic content pieces at the beginning, it's going to throw out 2 errors for each one of those podcasts. So you can see how if you have a really, a podcast with a lot of episodes, you're going to have a lot of errors there. Now, if you only have one dynamic content piece, you're only going to have 1 per episode. But anyway, so that starts to log a lot of them. And by the way, it says contact Captivate because Captivate is my host. Yay, Captivate. Captivate's already aware of this, so don't go hassling Captivate. They already know about this particular situation. And
it's not like they can push a button and all of a sudden it goes away. And that does not mean that Captivate is doing anything wrong. So again, I hacked mine in order to fix the validation error. Now I'll show you behind the scenes what that error is coming from. So we're on True Fans, and we're going to actually look at the podcast. Now you see in the chapters, there's actually 2 chapters at the very beginning. Those are those dynamic content pieces, and there's no headings, there's no titles, there's no topics there. They're just empty. And I didn't create those. I mean, yes, I created the dynamic content, but I certainly didn't put like empty chapters there. And the interesting thing is on True Fans, okay, you can edit it, and maybe you didn't know this, and again, we can go into depth as far as how to do this. Mr. Sam Sethi showed me. I love the fact that you can do this in True Fans. Wonderful. You can go in and actually edit the episodes with your dashboard. And so we go in and notice again, we can look at the chapters, and there's the 2 chapters. And we try to edit and watch what happens. There's a little error in the lower left, and it says that the chapter field can't be blank. Now that's an excellent stopgap in the program in True Fans, because it's stopping you from creating this. It's stopping you from creating an RSS feed that's invalid. That's wonderful. The problem is the RSS feed is already invalid once it comes from the host. And so it's saying, hey, you can't do this. You can't create an empty field. But it's like, guys, it's already empty.
This must be a different version of the video that I had, because I had it where it popped up when I showed the error, but the error shows up right down here. I don't know if you saw it.
Yeah. Well, that's okay.
It's a little error down there that
Okay,
pops
so
up.
you-
Just like
you
I had
see.
an easy button that popped up, and this must be a different version that I had. But anyway,
Is this place, is that on if you go to the settings to the and you come in and log in a new place, you could say creators side or
Yes,
something like that? Yeah.
and I was going to show the whole thing, but then
Yeah.
it was some private information, so that's
Yeah.
the only reason I didn't show more. And I'll try to figure out a better way of
after
showing.
you have like claimed your own podcast, you could then log in on your creators dashboard, and there you could do all.
Yep. There's a whole list of, like I said, no offense, I didn't want to share all
And
the
there you
details
have
of
the
the back end.
gamification. If you do this list,
Yep.
and we have some
Yep.
ideas about that. I like
Yep.
really your idea there. How
So
we
you'll-
could help along.
Yep, you have a list of like your podcasts once you log into your dashboard. After you've, like Martin said, after you've claimed your podcast, you have your podcast or all your podcasts, whatever, when you log in, and there'll be this list. And then what you do is you I should have the picture. You look all the way across, and right about here, it'll say episodes, and you click on that, and it pops open, and you can see the whole list of episodes. And then you just go in like you're editing one of the episodes. And that's what I've done here is I've clicked into one of the episodes. Probably the most tricky thing I just described was that you actually have to click on the little thing that says episodes. So when you're looking at your list of podcasts, go to your podcast, or maybe you just have one podcast. That's fine. That's perfectly fine. That's great. Just click on the thing that says episodes, and it'll pop open all your episodes. Even if you have validation errors, it'll pop it open. And then
And in
just
a
go
way,
in.
and now and that's probably for another time with the hosting companies, because there you could edit your own blog post, your own the file, replace it or whatever. If this will be really synchronized, then you should be able to do this kind of also, right?
Nope.
But shouldn't that be like
That's- Well, it should, but you
Yeah.
can't.
yeah, that's what I.
It should. It should, but
Yeah.
I don't know about other hosting companies. I can
Yeah.
only comment on Captivate. And I mean, the point of it is talking about RSS validation. You don't want validation errors, but specifically, we're using chapters as an example, and it just happens to be Captivate because I'm aware of that particular. So, we're using it as an example of a validation error. But with this one, there's no way to fix. And I've actually put it in a support request for Captivate.
And now when you're
There's
saying
no way to
I'm
fix it.
now I get this, flashbacks from Libsyn. I remember when it was something funky, so-called, with the RSS. You got this error message, and then you got, afraid and tried to refresh or what's happening. And I want to publish this episode and so on. So
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
this is
And
really
there's
a food for thought. In a way, it's very
and
technical, it's very deep, but it's very important. So I really like that you come up with this idea and this, showing how to do it. This is very valuable, Deborah. It's
and
a bit
Mr. Sam
geeky, but
Sethi, Mr. Sam Sethi helped me out because we were talking. He showed me. He came over here and he deleted it. It was
yeah,
great. I'm like, oh, thank you so much. You deleted the empty chapter. But when I went in to do it, I couldn't do it. But it makes sense because he is CEO of True Fans. He had
yeah,
super user. It's called super
yeah,
user. He is a
yeah,
super user, but it's also
yeah,
called super user
yeah.
access. So he was able to delete that. But I don't
Okay.
have. Nobody else has super except developer and people on his team have
Yeah,
super user access, which makes sense because
yeah. You don't
that
want
little
to.
warning.
Yeah,
Yeah, that little warning that popped up, and I'm sorry, I had another version that popped up, but if you have this problem, it'll pop up right in the lower left here, and it says that you can't delete it because you can't have it with an empty. I mean, it is kind of funny actually. It won't let you edit it, and deleting it is editing it. It won't let you edit it because you're not allowed to have an empty
yeah,
chapter.
yeah,
It's like what came first, the chicken or the egg.
yeah,
So you can't fix it. This particular problem, you can't fix it on Captivate because you can't get access to it, and you can't fix it on TrueFans because of the validation errors. TrueFans is actually protecting you. You can't fix it anywhere else.
Empty.
So I'm
Now,
just gonna.
I could go in and try to delete it, but you get the same error. See, it pops up again. Same error because it's saying it's empty.
Right
It's
there.
empty. You can't do that.
Right
So
there.
you get in this vicious circle. You cannot fix it because TrueFans is trying to stop you from creating that error, and you're stuck again. That's why I had to hack the feed to fix it. And again, it's not something that you can really mess up your feed. So I really can't honestly recommend that you do what I did. But if if you beg me, I might tell you how I did it. And so if I get enough responses where people want to know how I did it, I will share that on this podcast. But I need to hear from you because I don't want to be sharing this and then have people really mess up their feed. I don't want to be blamed for that. And,
I'm not.
I got to have no blame coming back on me because you can do it. I've done it for 2 of my feeds and it didn't take me very long, but you can really, really mess it up. So proceed with caution and not for the faint of heart. Or you hire someone to do it. So anyway, the question is, do you want your feed to be valid? For me, it wasn't a question. I need my feed to be valid. It's just who I am. And also, if I'm going to have this podcast on Studio Fusion about podcasting 2.0 and about high quality.
Whoops. Not sure what happened there, but
the
that was
end.
pretty much the end.
Yeah,
That was pretty
good.
close to the end, but
Yeah,
it got snipped somehow. But yeah, I was
yeah,
just saying that if we're gonna have this podcast that's saying that we're all for podcasting 2.0,
mm,
I don't know how I can say it has to be valid. That's what I
yeah.
expect of myself. I'm not judging anyone else on their decision tree on that one. But for me personally, it
And,
just
and
has to be
this is
valid.
good thing also because you had this when you did with the RSS and you put it called in the past they called a toot on Mastodon. So but now I think they call it a post because it's easier
Hmm.
to remember. And where you put it that you got a duplication. So it's easy that this could happen. I remember, for
Yep.
example, I have a podcast with very old podcast. I don't know if it's Blog Talk Radio or if it's SoundCloud or something, but I don't, I can't control it anymore. But still, it's out there, and it could be like a duplicate. And I mean, in a way, it's no problem. But if you get lots of these problems, so
Oh, it
Dave,
became a problem
yeah,
on
and
the
others, they are
duplicate
really looking
because
for that, but
they
they
had
have to
different
get,
feeds and they
yeah.
were.
And there you saw how this community, how they help out. You wrote this
Hmm.
post. A guy called Chad F was pinging or copying Jan
Yep.
Spurlock that is
Thank you,
working
thank
on
you,
this
thank you.
OP3, this stats, open statistics. And then he chimed in and pinged some others, and there you have that case closed, and then you could continue the conversation. So that's why
Shout out. Yeah.
yeah,
Like,
to talk to
thank
you
you.
that you should really go into this. For me, it's like sometimes these topics are very technical, but as long as it's related to podcasting on podcastindex.social, it's okay. And of course, if you're a newbie
Right.
or you don't know how to do it, and the Mastodon thing could be a bit, it's a bit different. But it was very good that you posted this, and so I did the star. I liked that you did that, and then you got this Fred, short
Thanks to
Fred, and
you.
then yeah. So and this has to happen also because it's very easy to complain or don't do anything about it or don't know that it's a problem. And that's the
Well, and
latest episode of Podcasting 2.0. Dave said openly that he has some things that he's thinking about, and if somebody could help him with this and that, he would be very appreciate very much. And then now James Cridland did that on Pod News, a short like call to action. If somebody wants to help with this and that was the latest episode of Podcasting 2.0. So it's really interesting how this could float around because
wow, and
it's not many people in a way compared to big like companies at Google that probably have departments or Spotify of certain things, and still or Apple for that matter, and they haven't developed the RSS feed for a long time. They have been
I'll have to
a
go
keeper
look at
for
what they're asking as
but
far as
we know
volunteers. Because
this is Todd Cochran. He couldn't say it, but it's some big news from Apple in the near future. But he has written like an NDA, so he can't say it. But something is coming.
right,
So
right,
maybe they have
right,
because lots of people have said, okay, Google are doing their thing, and we know their agenda. But Apple has now the chance if they really want to play ball in a good way. But maybe
right,
they want,
right,
maybe they need a wake up call. So.
right. Well, on this one, now people know generally speaking what a valid RSS feed is, at least peripherally speaking. So now you guys have a decision to make. And oh, we're going to start kind of what do we say, an action step.
Yep.
So we thought we'd gamify it and put the action step at different places. So when we have a guest, the guest will come up with the action step, and maybe we'll put the action step in the middle of our episode, maybe at the beginning. And so you need to find the action step, and I don't know, maybe we'll gamify that and have people make a list, and who comes up with
And we
has,
could send
like Easter eggs.
satoshis and so on to
Exactly, exactly.
and that's in a way that Claire is doing with podcasting 2.0 in practice. She has like homework episodes. So this is really that it could drive things forward with users
So
and fellow podcasters that want to do it. But it
so
is
Martin,
a
how
bit new. Yeah.
how about our action step be to go validate your, now granted, to validate it you actually have to be able to search for it on TrueFans, so that also
Yeah.
includes.
Or find an alternative RSS validator
Oh,
and
that's
see.
true,
And,
that's
and then we
true.
could see if it's
That's a
the
good
same
point.
results. So
That's a
that
good
could be a
point.
good thing.
So
Yeah.
so your action step for this week is to validate. Now that doesn't mean that it has to pass,
No.
but to validate your feed, and that just
Because
means to run it through I should say run it through a validator.
yeah, and I think this because in a way I took this for granted, but then I haven't thought about it because I don't need to think about it, right?
I
But
know the
this was
results for
yeah. So
for some.
I
already
think
ran.
some fellow podcaster will have like, oh, this validator thing. I remember that back in the day, but okay, I haven't checked that for some time. So this is really good, Deborah. So thanks again for coming up with this and doing this overview and video and all this kind of thing. It's great value and material.
Thank you. I got to go write down our action steps so I know what the list is. But
So
thank
so
you, Martin.
so I will say that, and maybe we'll find that in certain things. I mean, and I want to be in a natural way. But if you really, even if we have back and forth, but that's also a value if you like us, so to speak, talking back and forth. But if you really value this, you know what to do.
There you go.
You could subscribe, you could follow, whatever you want to call it. You could create an account on TrueFans and do that. Claim your own podcast and like if you want, be a fan of our podcast. And then you could send a comment with payment or a boostergram. You could stream satoshis during the listening. You could also send like buy me a coffee, I drink tea, so you could do that, or sending a PayPal
or
or
Diet
whatever.
Coke.
Yeah, or send some silver coin or whatever. Yeah, or Coke. You know, send send Coke, Diet Coke to Deborah. So
There
yeah,
you go. And we love to do shout outs, so we will definitely mention you, any kind of
yeah,
support. I've been watching the feed, so definitely catch you. If we don't catch you during, we'll definitely catch you afterwards and do shout out on that one. So there was something else. Oh, if you want to be a guest, you can find us the schedule and sign up to be a guest on our website. And our website is at studiofusion.co. It's almost .com, but not the M.
yeah. So
.co.
hopefully, we hope that you know that are running Colombia, because it's CO is Colombia. So we hope it. Maybe I shouldn't said that, but okay, yeah.
And we can tune in. You can tune in at this time, definitely in the live stream, unless we're taking a day off. The live stream at this time, which is 9 a.m. Let me see. Yeah, 9 a.m. Pacific time, noon Eastern time, and we're talking about Friday. And what did I say? 5 p.m.
6
Did I get
p.m.
that
If
right?
it's
No,
noon, it's
6.
6 p.m. Central
Yeah,
European time for this
and
one.
5 p.m. UK.
Yeah, and for the
On
guests is no.
that's this time for
Yeah,
guests. It's this
we've
time.
yeah,
And then if we have a guest, Martin and I actually do an hour before as well. So there's 2 hours. But
yeah.
and then stay tuned, because I'm not going to promise it's the next week, but
Please,
too much.
please listen to that, to the trailer, and have you set that up on TrueFans
Yep.
that you could pay listeners if they listen to
Yep.
the trailer? That's also
Yes.
gamification.
Yes, exactly. So you get
listen
some
to the
sats.
trailer, because it's one to joke, because now in the future it's listening time and engagement. It's not only download, but if you listen to the whole trailer, because it's more than 1 minute, we will get a download. Yay!
Oh, that's true. That's true. So yeah, go get some sats. Satoshis or Satushis or however
Yeah.
you want to pronounce them by listening to the trailer. So we'll do that. All right. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you same time, same place next week.
Yeah, thanks.